In the relentless heartbeat of Meridian, where ambition drowns out the cries no one dares to hear, a single act of quiet kindness will challenge the walls built by silence and change 2 lives forever. Meridian pulsed, a relentless engine fueled by ambition. Glass towers scraped the perpetually smog-dulled sky, reflecting the hurried figures below, faces buried in screens, strides purposeful, conversations clipped transactions. In this city where success was measured in quarterly reports and social media reach, empathy was often relegated to a luxury few could afford. Yet, nestled in the aging brick building on Sycamore Street, a different rhythm hummed. Ilara moved through her world with a quiet deliberation that stood in stark contrast to the city's frenzy. Her presence wasn't loud, but it was deeply felt. She was the woman who watered Mrs. Gable's wilting geraniums when the elderly neighbor forgot, who left a carefully wrapped loaf of banana bread outside Mr. Henderson's door after his dog passed, who always remembered young Leo's fascination with constellations and slipped him a star chart on his birthday. Her smile was a warm constant, her listening ear a sanctuary. While the city often mistook her gentle demeanor for simplicity, an unassuming nature easily overlooked, Ilara saw her acts of care as deliberate threads weaving against the unraveling fabric of urban indifference. She knew the cost of kindness in a place like Meridian, yet she paid it willingly, stitch by patient stitch. Her apartment, a small haven above the dusty florist shop, reflected this quiet persistence. Sunlight streamed through clean windows onto shelves lined with second-hand books and jars of dried lavender. A worn armchair faced the window, overlooking the bustling street below, a vantage point for observation, not judgment. Here, Ilara planned her small interventions. The card for the new family moving into 3B, the extra groceries discreetly added to her basket for the struggling student in the basement unit. She didn't seek recognition. The flicker of surprised warmth in a neighbor's eye, the unburdened sigh of someone momentarily seen, was fuel enough. In a city screaming for attention, Ilara offered the profound gift of quiet presence, a counterpoint to the deafening roar of ambition. She understood the whispers, the assumptions that her kindness stemmed from naivety. But her persistence wasn't born of ignorance. It was a fierce, silent rebellion against the coldness threatening to consume Meridian, brick by uncaring brick. The rhythm of Sycamore Street changed subtly with the arrival in apartment 4C. Aidan Thorne moved in with the quiet efficiency of a shadow. Unlike the usual flurry of movers and new beginnings, his transition was marked by minimal boxes and a palpable silence that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. He was perhaps in his late 30s, with sharp features that might have been handsome if not etched with a profound weariness. His eyes, when Ilara caught a fleeting glimpse in the dim hallway, held a hollowed-out look, fixed on some distant, internal horizon. He offered no smiles, returned no greetings, just a curt nod or a swift avoidance of eye contact. His comings and goings were erratic, late nights returning with slumped shoulders, or days when the door to 4C remained firmly shut, a fortress against the world. Ilara noticed, as she noticed most things about the building's ecosystem. She saw the discarded takeout containers accumulating outside his door, the way his mail often overflowed the small brass box. She heard the muffled, late-night sounds, not parties or arguments, but a heavy, oppressive silence occasionally punctuated by the scrape of a chair or the low thrum of indistinct music that felt more like a barrier than entertainment. The usual building chatter, the shared complaints about the temperamental boiler or the noisy pipes, seemed to stop short at his threshold. Neighbors exchanged knowing looks, keeps to himself, bit intense, probably just stressed. The assumption was urban anonymity, the right to be left alone. But Ilara sensed something deeper, a weight carried within Aidan Thorne that went beyond typical city stress. It was a silence that didn't feel chosen. It felt imposed, a crushing isolation. While others shrugged and moved on, respecting the unspoken city code of non-interference, Ilara felt the familiar tug of concern. Her quiet observation shifted from casual awareness to a focused, gentle vigilance. She began timing her own hallway comings to potentially cross paths, offering a simple, unpressured good morning or evening, met always with that same, distant nod or averted gaze. Her persistent kindness met a wall of profound silence, and the question began to form, not in words, but in the quiet intensity of her watchful care. What storm raged behind that door? The sounds from above became Ilara's unwanted soundtrack. More frequent now, the heavy, dragging footsteps across the bare floorboards of 4C late into the night spoke of restless pacing, not purposeful movement. Sometimes, a sharp, sudden silence would follow, thick and unsettling, as if Aiden had simply stopped mid-stride, consumed by some invisible weight. Then, the pacing would resume, a monotonous, anxious rhythm that vibrated faintly through Ilara's ceiling. One rainy Tuesday evening, the fragile quiet shattered. A crash echoed down the stairwell, the unmistakable sound of shattering glass, followed by a low, guttural sound that wasn't quite a shout, more a strangled release of anguish. Ilara froze, her book forgotten in her lap. The sound hung in the air, raw and terrifying. Downstairs, Mrs. Gable's television abruptly lowered in volume. A door down the hall clicked shut, firmly. Ilara waited, her heart pounding against her ribs. Should she go up? Knock? Call someone? The city's reflex was to ignore, to rationalize. Probably just dropped something. Too much to drink, not my business. But the animalistic pain in that sound clawed at her instincts. She stood, her hand hovering near her apartment door. Before she could decide, the heavy silence descended again, deeper and more absolute than before. It felt like a vacuum, sucking the air from the hallway. The message was clear: stay away. Do not intrude. Ilara slowly withdrew her hand. Forcing her way in felt like a violation, potentially making things worse. Yet, doing nothing felt like complicity in his isolation. She retreated to her armchair, the book lying unopened. The echo of that crash, that raw sound of despair, lingered. Her usual methods, the bread, the card, the quiet smile, felt woefully inadequate against the magnitude of whatever darkness held Aiden Thorne captive. The silence upstairs wasn't just absence of noise. It was a fortress wall, and her gentle kindness seemed like pebbles tossed against stone. That night, listening to the oppressive quiet from above, Ilara felt the first cold tendrils of helplessness wrap around her resolve. How could she reach through such impenetrable silence? Driven by a persistent unease that overshadowed her usual calm, Ilara decided on a tangible gesture. Words were clearly barriers with Aiden. Perhaps something silent, something practical, could slip through. She remembered the overflowing mail, the discarded containers. Late one afternoon, when the hallway was predictably empty, she carried a sturdy, woven basket upstairs. Inside, she placed essentials chosen with careful thought. A bag of rich ground coffee, dark roast, the kind that promised warmth, a small carton of organic milk, a loaf of crusty sourdough bread, a jar of local honey, and a few perfectly ripe oranges, a burst of color and vitality. Nestled beside them was a simple, unmarked card. Inside, in her neat, flowing script, she wrote only, "Thinking of you." A neighbor. No platitudes, no demands, just an acknowledgement of existence, an offer of basic sustenance. She set the basket squarely in front of the scarred wood of 4CS door, knocked softly but decisively, and quickly retreated down the stairs, her heart thudding against her ribs. Back in her apartment, she strained to hear. Minutes stretched into an agonizing silence. Had he heard? Would he open the door? Disdainfully kick the basket aside? Finally, the distinct sound of a deadbolt turning cut through the quiet. Ilara held her breath. She heard the soft scrape of the basket being pulled inside. Then, the door closed again, the lock clicking back into place with finality. No word of thanks, no glimpse of the occupant. Yet, the basket was gone. It wasn't rejection. It was acceptance. A small, silent transaction had occurred. He hadn't thrown it back. He had taken it in. A fragile spark of hope ignited in Ilara's chest. Maybe the wall wasn't entirely impervious. Maybe the smallest crack had appeared. She pictured him making coffee, perhaps, the scent filling his silent apartment. A tiny fragment of normalcy, of care, penetrating the gloom. It was a minuscule victory, but in the quiet war against despair, it felt significant. The silence remained, but now it contained the echo of her offering, a tangible proof that someone outside the fortress walls had noticed and cared. The basket was accepted. The silence remained, but now it held a fragile spark. A crack had appeared in the fortress wall. But could a single spark ignite a connection? Could kindness truly reach through the crushing weight of despair? Continue to part 2. The echo witnessed the delicate ripple effect of one small act and discover if hope can grow in the silence.